Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here at the Cannes Film Festival, and it's time for a review of 3,000 Years of Longing. This is the newest film from George Miller, who is hot off of Mad Max Fury Road. It's been 7 years since that movie. And what I admire a lot about just the existence of this project, and what's obvious when you're watching it, is that this is the product of a studio who said, George Miller, buddy, you just made Mad Max Fury Road. Here's $60 million, do whatever the hell you want. And they just let him go. Like, I don't know who this movie's for. I think it's gonna have a lot of trouble finding an audience, but it exists. And if there's anything you can say about it, it's that it's very creative and original and bold. And I think in our starved for original movies world, a lot of people are going to defend the movie for its creativity alone. But honestly, I kind of thought this was a mess. Our main character is a writer who awakens a genie by accident while in her hotel room, and the genie wants to grant her 3 wishes in order to be free. I was on board for the start of this movie. I think that the initial dynamic between Tilda Swinton and the genie is really funny, especially when she's kind of asking like what kind of things are allowed and what things aren't allowed. And really the crucial rule here is that the wish has to be her heart's desire. You can't just like wish for a cookie. So Tilda Swinton has to be very thoughtful about her wishes. And the tricky thing about her is that she's pretty content in her life. She doesn't really desire anything that much, which makes her a very difficult person to grant wishes to, and also makes her kind of a weak fucking main character if you don't want anything. But most of this movie is Idris Elba telling Tilda Swinton stories about the various times that he's failed to end up granting those 3 wishes to people. And this is where the 3,000 years of longing come from, because these stories span, throughout different times around the world and different periods of history. We get a lot of very elaborate set pieces and costumes with these flashbacks, but there's narration for like the whole movie, which I found a little bit annoying. And my investment in these stories that were being told really varied. I didn't always know why we were focusing so much on like these random people. I mean, Idris Elba is kind of in these stories. I was more invested in the stories that his character was more emotionally involved in, like the final story that he was telling. But with some of them, it's like we're learning about all these kings and their brothers and all this weird shit, and I was just kind of like, why? Why? Let's go back to Tilda Swinton for a second, which I wish the movie did more. She gets one scene where she talks about her past that I really liked, but I really felt like she needed some more history or maybe some more stories. Like a better movie that I'm imagining is them kind of trading stories off. Like I would have been very interested in her telling mundane stories about her life, even as uninteresting as it is. Like tell me about Tilda Swinton mowing the lawn and looking at birds. Like that would have been totally cool with me. But I really felt like we lost sight of her character by the middle of this movie. And you may be thinking, hold on, isn't this movie a romance? Well, it kind of randomly turns into one like 2/3 through. When it suddenly became a romance because it decided to become a romance, I got whiplash in the theater. I was just baffled. I was like, this came out of nowhere. And if you consider the cautionary story that Idris Elba just told her, and then you look at her making this decision, it's like, why the fuck would you do that? So the movie's kind of a romance towards the end of the movie. And I was willing to give it a shot because I was like, well, I guess finally at least, we're out of the woods with the narration and the flashbacks, and we are focusing on Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba. But it just felt like too little too late because I didn't really get any sense of chemistry here. There was no romantic spark for me. And I just kind of felt like, what are we doing here? And as the movie goes even further towards the end, I was just kind of confused with why certain things were happening and what the rules of certain magic were, and I just felt kind of lost. Now, interestingly, some people really like this movie, and the people who like it a lot think that the romance was like beautiful and it made them swoon, and like that's a completely different movie to me. I don't understand how they got there, but there's something interesting about the fact that this movie has such different reactions from different people. It was somehow trying to be about like the beauty of storytelling, very much in a Life of Pi kind of way. But I can't really exactly say how, other than it's just like literally about storytelling. I was unsatisfied with Tilda and Idris Elba's chemistry and their character development. The flashbacks have a lot of spectacle to them, but I wasn't all that engaged in most of them. You know, the marketing's been really great for this movie. Like, I didn't watch the trailer until after the movie, so I was really curious how they would do it. And they're kind of going for like the hard rock music, and they're like, this movie is fucking insane. And I feel like that's kind of the only way that you could market this movie because, as I said earlier, I really do not understand the audience for this, but I'm worried about that $60 million budget. I'm worried about that. And yeah, I don't think that this movie is going to have any Oscar chances. Sorry, fellas. I'm somewhere between a 4 and a 5 for this one, but I guess I didn't like hate myself watching it, so I would give it a 5 out of 10. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. How many years have you longed for?